Maneva na say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there osia dem yopo.
Why did you stop the sinking fund? Which is the debt repayment account. That's what it means. Now we are talking about how to get 40 billion. My answer to them. You spoil the market that would have given the city component of that. How much is the, I would have brought the statistics, I forgot. How much is the value of the bonds that have been paid? And these are Ghanaians who are putting their money, and the government was borrowing. And remember, when Dr. Dufo started the bonds, it was only T-bills, and then Bank of Ghana.
Yes, it's been a long, quite a while. I think the last time we met, was it at the consultations on the economy?
Consultations,
yes. But for you, I hope you're well.
I'm well. It's great.
How is government treating you?
How's government treating me? I'm in an advisory role, and that's what it means. So I do advise, but I do other active things. I get involved, like we're saying, in the national dialogue.
Yeah.
Education at home.
Okay.
And so those are the things. Those are presidential initiatives.
Okay.
Or party initiatives. Okay. And it's the executive that has to implement it.
Okay.
And on top of the executive, you have His Excellency the President and his team, vice and this chief of staff. So they are the top. So we are, high-level implementers, if you like, advisors. So that's what I do on a regular basis, finance and the economy side.
Okay.
Working closely with the chief of staff.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I also realize on a couple of occasions, seems yourself and your former deputy, who is now Minister for Finance, I saw the two of you together. So quite a close relationship.
Well, you can't be an effective advisor to the president on the economy if you don't have a good relations with the Minister for Finance, because remember, he has the executive authority.
Okay.
Under the Constitution to do. So that's what it is. But yes, you're right. The rapport is good because he was my deputy. It's something he himself doesn't hide.
Okay.
So, and he was in charge of the budget. But I always remind people that he was also. I went to Parliament to lay bills. But he was an active participant in Parliament.
Okay.
And on the Finance Committee, which is when I was a deputy as far back. Because he's been a 3-term, or so. So that's where we met first, and then I was then deputy, and I became minister, and he became the deputy in charge of the budget. So that already starts the exposure, in addition to the committee work in Parliament, Finance Committee, of which he became ranking member and then leader of the House. So he has a few things up his sleeve.
And clearly you'll be busy with a lot, because economy, big issue going into the elections. The two of us have had many conversations about how the past administration ran.
Yes, I was on the finance and economy
yes.
for the manifesto and all that.
Yes. So it's a big matter, and we'll come to the 24-hour economy and others. I would like to start from the book, though. But so far,
I thought the book would come after this one.
Because it's anyway. So maybe we can just continue on developments within the economy. Then we'll conclude. We'll conclude on the book. We'll conclude on the book.
So that will give the book a context.
Yes. But so far, how do you feel about the way things are looking for the administration?
2 points. So to finish on the minister, yes, for example, you may have seen those pictures. That's because the more prominent ones were when I accompanied the team to Washington. Which is not new to him as well as a deputy. For the spring meetings. But prior to that, the pictures making the rounds were the fourth review. Where I participated together with the governor, who are the two pillars of economic management, but also to downplay the role of NDPC, so we are the real sector, and NDPC is as the overall planner, so most of what we are talking about, or we'll be talking about the 24-hour economy, we should not forget that most of them have come out of previous medium-term plans, and they've been consolidated.
Okay.
And we've been working on some of them already.
Okay.
So it's not like as new as our opponents especially would like to present. So so this collaboration is leading to some results. Like the first immediate action upon taking over was to get control of government cash, which is the treasury single account, which we were implementing.
Okay.
Yes. So
control of government cash.
Control of government cash is very important. You see, because government disburses or indicates the amount that should go to various sectors of the economy through the controller and accountant general.
Okay.
So they are the ones that implement.
Okay.
Working with the budget division, which prepare the budget. They are on the front line of implementing the budget. That's why when you go to every ministry department, agency, when you go to every MMDA, you have treasury officers.
Okay.
And they are senior people. They are the finance department of the ministries of finance.
Okay.
Right? So they are there. So if at the beginning of the quarter, beginning of the month, you allocate resources, and then the controller puts the money into their accounts. Right? They are not going to spend it. They are spending over time.
Okay.
But if you don't control that money as government cash, the tax me and you, paid, right? They are sitting in bank accounts because government hasn't got, banks. It's the government's bank is the central bank, but everybody cannot come to Accra, so we use the commercial banks. Okay. So it's important to control those funds. Otherwise, to put it simply, they will use your own money to come and buy your treasury bills and lend to you.
It can be done.
It is done. They are bankers. It's like you've given your money to their savings.
Okay.
Right. That's what they use, to invest. That's how can they pay you the interest. They trade in the money.
Okay.
They have to trade in the money in order that they can make money and pay you interest. Right. And when you go and you say, I have some savings, I've been advised, to buy 3 bills. And then when we did the bonds, which the haircut. I say
yes.
Yes. So you go and maybe you're talking to a friend and he says, but savings there, you don't earn much on it. Mine is in T-bills. And the T-bill rate is high. T-bill is the first cash management of government.
Okay.
It borrows ahead of the money flowing in. Right. But if you don't manage your money well, the money which the banks have mobilized includes government money.
Okay.
And that's what they consolidate to buy the bonds, to get the interest on which they pay you savings. So when we put the Mama administration put the bonds, which used to be in the Bank of Ghana, on the stock exchange, what it means is that where previously the government would say, okay, I'm issuing bonds, which means I'm borrowing, right? And then says I'm going to repay for those, Now it's saying that the bonds are the stock exchange. If you need to buy, the government bonds, just go to your bankers and tell them you want to buy, bonds.
Okay.
Right. So it started with the treasury bills, and then we put the bonds on the stock market. And the primary banks are the ones who work in dealing. So the long and short is that, so just as you go and you say, can you put my money in T-bills? It earns more interest because your money is now being lent to government.
Okay.
And because you are benefiting from it, the entire benefit doesn't go to the bank.
Okay.
But if you don't go and do that, the entire benefit of investing in the bonds will go to the banks.
I see.
But it's government money. It's your money, your savings money, households, individuals, government, businesses.
So if you're not careful, they will take government money, lend it to government, and the same government will pay interest on their money to the banks.
Precisely. So you implement a scheme. So we started implementing a scheme, which the Honorable foreseen as budgets, the deputy in charge of budget, was responsible for, working with the controller. We call it the treasury single account. In other words, the meaning is that no matter where the government money is, it is one account.
Okay.
The consolidated fund.
And so far, have you been successful with that?
I'm explaining how come, we got money, immediately we took over to start making payments.
Okay.
You sweep all those monies.
Okay.
At the end of the year, you're supposed to actually return money to chest.
Okay.
When the money the MDA is having used, they must return it to chest. Old expression. Right.
Okay.
But we made a return to chess electronically. So just as you can monitor your bank accounts here, and you have the screens here, a controller has a similar thing, monitoring all the government accounts.
Okay.
But these were the things that were relaxed. So coming to power and taking over, you bring it back.
Okay.
Because the scheme is there. And it's part of GIFMIS, if you've heard about GIFMIS. Yes, the treasury single account is part of GIFMIS.
Okay.
So it made funds, accessible. That's the first part in answer to your question. We've come a long way, so we shouldn't forget the question. How's the economy doing well?
Okay.
Okay. The second one, you are selling gold.
Okay.
But who is buying the gold? People come in from anywhere and they just go into the bush and they buy the gold.
Okay.
Right? So, as I said recently, by just restoring order to the gold business, and we have the precedents, cocoa board. The farmers sell their cocoa to cocoa board. When we used to do cotton on a large scale, we had a cotton board, development board. Right? So, Ghana has had these boards, from the Nkrumah region. So, the first step is, why don't we do something in which we have the experience? Cocoa board, cotton board, and all those, all those, I think we had about 5 or 6 boards.
Okay.
So we quickly established a gold board, which then brings order. And I was listening to the interview as I was coming. So you see the order that was restored. And you see the cleanup work that is being done, particularly in the Deep Forest Reserve.
Okay.
GM himself was monitoring. Remember, at various times he said, we've been able to get them out of 6 forest reserves. They were about 8, 7. And within a week of saying that, we are now in the 8th where some difficulties are being faced. Then by the time I was giving the next interview, they've got them back. But these are hardened people, so they are going back.
Okay.
They will tempt the government.
Okay.
That's a cleanup job. And a shift from repatriation to making sure that you face the laws. It's order. You're bringing order. So why should anybody be surprised? First, why should anybody be surprised? That by bringing order, the gold, which was a gold for oil, and anybody could come and just take it out, including smuggling and all that. We are doing better.
Okay.
Anytime you improve a situation, you do better.
Okay.
Right. That's something JFA and his team. We want to put it that way. Now they have a board. Just like Cocoa Board has a board.
Yeah.
That's why it's a board. It's more like a state-owned enterprise. The boards are like state-owned enterprise. So it shouldn't be surprising that we have a handle on the gold. We are selling in a more orderly manner. But when you sell the gold, you get forex. And the gold itself, when you refine it, is part of what you call bullion.
Okay.
So all this. Yes, where some of this started by the previous administration, yes, but there was disorder in Galamsey, there was disorder in the sale and whatever. So I hear people saying, it's because we did this that there's a strong economy, or we started a strong economy, or the economy wasn't strong. Right? In comparison with what our friends are saying. No. Yes, you were doing it in a much haphazard manner. Excuse me to say. Now we have restored order. You shouldn't be surprised.
Okay.
You want to take the credit? Is it fair? All right. So you see, these are, I'm giving 2 examples of the, and when you take control and the money is coming to Bank of Ghana and it's hard, then you increase your reserves.
Okay.
So, right?
Yeah.
And when you increase your reserves, it means that you're able to put more forex on the market.
Okay.
Right? So the pressure, everybody going, if previously, let me use practical. If previously people want 100 million, let's say 200 people, they want 100 million. They are fighting for 100 million. On average, everybody is fighting. Then because of the measures that you are taking, you've increased that 100 million to 200, to 300, 400 million. Remember, that's how the reserves were increasing. Right? So you're supplying to the market. Right? So the people who are rushing and are, buying at a high rate, now the supply has increased. Demand versus supply. So when the supply, the thing increases, Economy, simple, O level. I think this is what we all understand. When you increase supply, the supply, line moves, right, against the demand, which is the same or increasing at a slower rate. So the price falls, and the price is the exchange rate.
Okay. So you're suggesting that what we are seeing is actually you coming in and ensuring some order in terms of how things are done.
So various institutions have had to, we move from Ministry of Finance to the Gold Board to Bank of Ghana.
Yes.
So the coordination is what is bringing them.
So order and coordination.
And when you do that, well, yes, naturally, because it's nature, when the rains have been good, but of course, as somebody was saying, we should watch out, otherwise the crops will rot. So remember, there's also a proposal for that farmer services companies that will buy the crop at the end of the year, which the Minister of Agric is working on. So should we be surprised that maybe by the end of the year, yes, if we reduce even the post-harvest losses by 50%, right? And the food index, right? Remember, is a food index, the exchange rate, that determines inflation.
Okay.
If the exchange rate is high and you buy dollars at a high rate, you are not a philanthropist. When you bring the goods, it will be high. If the exchange rate is good, it's low, from 13, 15 to 10 point something, it means that when you bring in the goods, you are exchanging at 10, not at 15. So the city price goes down, right? The import prices are part of the calculation of inflation. So why are you surprised that it's coming down?
Inflation is coming down.
It's coming down, yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so you see how the whole things are linked, right? We started with, and then food prices, which is the largest component still, in calculating the inflation. With good, today you travel anywhere, you can stop by, always make sure it's hot maize, plantain and the rest, along the way.
Okay.
With the kids or whatever, you don't have to branch to your restaurants or, and the food prices go down. So again, is it any wonder that we started from the forex going down? Now you see how the inflation also goes down. Now the catch is sustaining these policies.
Okay.
And that's why you need structures like the export council. You need to build infrastructure, and that's where 24-hour economy
comes in.
It doesn't mean, yes, right. Were we doing them previously? By all means, we'll go through some of them. And we'll go to history and show that, there are things, but we want to do it better.
Okay.
That is the thing. Yeah. So you see, the whole thing is integrated. And remember, NDPC, I mentioned, they've been in charge of planning, are going to be working and put most of what we are doing now on what seems to be ad hoc into the medium-term plan, which is a requirement.
Very interesting. So from step 1, you're moving to step 2. So 1, you've implemented policy. No, not really.
I'm trying to show the policies, and telling, our people who are listening that it's not luck. It's not.
It is not planning, luck.
Well, some luck. In the sense that you don't control the rain, right? So nature is giving you the rain.
Okay.
Okay. But if you have a farmer services company, then go into the dry season. Just as with smoothing the gold, you smoothing, the through the farmers services company, that will add value. Process, store maize, dry them, store maize in more modern ways of doing things. It means that come the dry season, they'll release this into the market, where previously we have to substitute with imports, and then there's pressure on the forex. We started with the forex.
Yeah.
Now it's good, but the pressure will come. So we have to prepare for that pressure. We're in a dry season. Food is gone. I mean, fresh food for that matter. And it will take you from October, until the rains again in April, May. You see, so you have the dry spell. Meanwhile, in that dry spell, you also have Christmas. You have Easter. Very high demand, because everybody's buying something for the kids.
I see. Now, if I think those who have watched earlier conversations we've had would always remember what you always say, that if you prepare for it, the impact will not be that strong.
Exactly.
You said the same for COVID.
Yes.
So you have the opinion that moving forward, what needs to be done is to sustain what has been
to
started.
know the cycles and prepare for them.
Know the
To
cycles.
and that is what our manifesto is trying to do now.
Know the cycles.
Know the cycles, know the things that affect the economy, and we have from ERP SAP, remember, the knowledge is there. So now consolidate them, right? And then, therefore, do institutions. Okay, one, we need to fix roads.
Okay.
Right? We need to fix roads. In order that some of what we are talking about, will be done in a more efficient manner.
Okay.
The food will rot if the roads are terrible and it will take, so there's a road element.
Okay.
Right? Have we not done rural roads? Have we not done cocoa roads? Have we not done? So the thing is that we have the spirit. Let's do it better. Let's learn. If you're going to do those, you must borrow. You remember smart borrowing?
Yes.
Yes. So much of what the 24-hour economic committee is saying is not necessarily new. Okay. They are saying we have been in opposition. We've sat. We've reflected. Want to do things in a better way. Jim was talking about it yesterday. That look, many of the things we want to do, particularly the water basin. What is that dream at the time the dam was done? Okay. What was it? What's the other? It's not just about electricity. If you go to a 7-year development plan, what are the other things that have been left undone? And remember, the experience we tried to do was the multimodal. The 3 billion CDB loan was the first attempt. To do the docking size, to do the badging. That was the purpose of that loan. Which, incidentally, the party criticizing now, right, which later got part of it through Sino Hydro, right, criticized heavily. So that's what the criticism. Nkrumah got his criticism, Mills got his criticism, GM got his criticism. Let's just keep focus. That's why the criticisms. It won't come by accident. So preparation is very important. And that's why we have, And then, of course, you prepare for the possibility that, and it's not a case, it's not like wishing a nation in, but you may have drought the next time.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So those are the cycles you're talking about. The
possibility
of drought.
Yes, that we know that we hardly run in the economy for 5 years without drought. And this is where the heavy infrastructure is now coming in.
Okay.
We have what it takes, the big water, the basin alone can supply during the drought. Remember, we tried irrigation and so are there new ways, pumps and things which we can do better. Right. So that is what the consolidation, but it is tied to the fact that to do these things, the economy must keep running and we must keep working. Okay. That's where the 24-hour concept, construction of roads. Once we are able to get the money, we do it. So I heard from Parliament that we are struggling. We don't even know where to get the money. We are smuggling things in. Of course we know. Right. Goody was talking about Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. The president of the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. Okay. For 8 years, what did the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund do? We lent money in it. You remember?
In fact, I think we're still trying to find the 2 million that was paid for the Sky Train, among others.
Another. Yeah. Right. So the fact that you couldn't do anything with Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund doesn't mean that the originators of the idea who are back cannot. It's for projects that can pay for itself. That's why it has a positive rate of return. And many of the projects we are talking about, badging, pipelines, and whatever in the water can pay for itself. Okay. What is the evidence of me saying that? Terminal 3 is paying for itself. Okay. Terminal Port Expansion is paying for itself. The pipeline, for taking gas instead of flaring, to turn it into that, is paying for itself. Okay. Etuabo, which is started processing the gas, is paying for itself. We've not even extended Etuabo, not even by one, and we depending on IPPs instead of paying them ESLA. It was done. So, those who are criticizing should realize that 8 years have passed where many of these initiatives were not made to work.
So you're returning to a plan that you started at an GM1.
Yeah, I was just
you're continuing with it.
Okay, it's good you had a GM. I was just going to say it's not my plan. Right?
No, it was
Who was the leader? Exactly,
yes.
That's what he just said. Yes, I remember, if you take GIF, he says he's done an export council.
Yeah.
Remember we did Exim?
Yes.
What did we do with Exim? because we gave Exim the EDI fund, we went back and we didn't look outward. The Indian Prime Minister is here. Their market is big. India Exim is the one that's giving us money to do some of the railway line. It's India Exim, the one that will connect them, so that we can use, to badge even other products. It's India Exim. So if they are coming with their Exim, and they've gone beyond just exporting commodities and fact, what can we also say, Mr. Prime Minister? Can you also open up? You have 4 billion people, as I was saying. Open your market up a bit so that our exporters can also sell. And that's how you consolidate and add to the gold. Because the exporters are bringing more money. Right? And then when you add value to the gold, you enhance, and so gradually then your forex. And then at least, and Jay was misinterpreted. What he was saying is that as we do these things and improve our reserve situation, when I spoke about the foreign exchange reserve, then let's be careful. And it comes to my point again, prepare. Because a point might come when the gold price will go down. So he's saying that if we build the gold reserves, let's build it to the point where we tell ourselves that the exchange rate should not go above 12, 13. The exchange rate, if it is going 10, let's keep some of it because you are importing less. Don't just continue importing for the sake of importing. Right? So that when that hard time comes, then you can keep it. So that you don't have to raise prices. PURC doesn't have to raise prices. But it keeps it within, even if it raises prices, it's raising it within 0.5 point, every country adjusts. But it's because of how they put the structures. So the combination of Exim, Infrastructure Fund, and all those, which are, and now we also have the Development Bank here. So we are building the institutions that can do some of these things properly.
A lot of what you're talking about, in fact, throughout our history, our economic history, you hear a lot of structural adjustments, structural reforms.
Homegrown structural
adjustment. All of this looks like...
It's homegrown. Look,
okay.
Growth 24, boosting agricultural productivity, agro-processing, that's a big element. But remember, even when you talk about agro-processing and storage, in some places you still have Nkrumah silos. Right? We now want to add private sector. That's what it is.
Okay.
Right. So you can see what I'm talking about for food to resolve food insecurity.
Okay.
That's a 24-hour economy. It's so alien for some of the structures we're putting in place. Revitalizing manufacturing industrialization. We know that we had a state-owned enterprises, a lot of government factories and the rest. We've tried privatization. We are trying private sector. Some of them are now coming and build factories and whatever. Ghanaians are also doing that. The gas processing and the rest. Who says that Ghanaians who have money should not also process, the gas, right? They can also do it. Excuse me, please.
Now, if you just join us, we're having a conversation with Honorable Seth Terkpeh, and you're just turning to 24-hour economy.
Yes.
So some of the models
and some of the models, and I'm saying that one, they are tied to things that happened for which there's a history, right? And when my book was launched, Dr. Pepper-Chedd, I know he was a minister for the introduction of VAT, so he was a minister, who took over after Kumi Preko and so he was given a history of some of the things. I was just a coordinator at the time, but we have a short history there. And he was enhancing on it. We have such people around. We have such people. Guzi himself, remember, was a kidder who went into business as a businessman. So he's bringing, so I'm talking about construction, housing, rich creative culture, national theater, logistics, transport, warehousing, ports, energy, as well as port expansion. So what is it that is making people sit back and say, this thing cannot be done? When we have examples of doing them. I think as NDC, we should just remain focused and support, the team, support his excellency, and rather bring where there are fault lines, like people still in the forest and the rest, which may jeopardize it. We went back to the haphazard way in which gold was being managed. That's when the city will suffer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for you, so a few things. First, the 24-hour economy. Within what context will the policies be implemented? Are you talking about a separate structure from the structures that are running currently? Or will see evidence of a 24-hour economy in the policies that are implemented by the ministries and state agencies, among others, because everybody is of the opinion that Gozitana and his team will do a separate work from what the ministers are doing.
No.
It won't be that different.
No. They are, I think he made it clear. You know, and his excellency made it clear. The ministers have a role.
Okay.
If you watch yesterday, was the ministers who were talking about how they coordinated, those who did the initial, you know, from the Minister of Local Government to Minister of Trade and Industry in particular to, you know, who else? Yeah. So, yes.
Minister of Fisheries.
They are working with, yes. And were those ministers who are becoming, were they not part of the preparation of the manifesto? Many of them were in the manifesto committees. Okay. Right. So the thing is to manage the synergy. The thing is to manage. I mentioned NDPC. Much of this would have to go in the medium-term plan. Okay. Right. So this is like preparing a strategic plan and saying, out of my plans, this is what I'm going to focus on. Okay. And there will be timelines. People are asking, so where do you want to be and all that? These are going to be part of the strategic plan and others for the ministries. So the ministers have their own. They still have their line responsibility. They have, if we take a look, the minister who can go to parliament. Okay. So, yeah, so naturally, the 24-hour economy has been coordinating, will continue to coordinate with the sector ministers. You see, because they come in because they are going to look at 4 or 5 ministries working at the same time. Okay. And the best example is the water basin. Okay. You have a Greek. Because it's a grain basket, as we say, for Ghana. And as JM said, we plant, right, maize, flowers, and those closer to Buipe and the rest. He mentioned Tamale Airport, if you remember, which we were going to make a commercial airport. And he said, we'll lift it, right? So the Minister for Agric, the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, now have to link with the Minister for Transport. Okay. Right? So what the 24-hour economic committee is doing is preparing a schedule. It's just like there used to be a secretariat called the Structural Adjustment Program Secretariat. And it had a board, you know, what to do is a committee. And below it was a secretariat, on which I had the privilege of, you know, working. And before the committee comes to meet, the secretariat goes around. What is happening with structural adjustment in Agric, in this, in that? So the secretary is not taking anything over. Okay. You know, of course there could be some frictions and we are all, you know. So the secretariat is coordinating. So if you take the water basin, you see we've mentioned from Agric Ministry, Lands and Natural Resources, which will have to, Lands Commission and the rest have to facilitate and work harmoniously with the community, right? And then we've gone into transport, you know, and we are mentioning airlines, but don't forget the docking sites. Okay. You know, the docking sites. You know, I come from close to the Volta, right? I come from Somalia, close to Akuse, close to Paul, and close to, you know, yes. So you have the docking sites. The docking sites are going to help our market women. We know it. They take boats from one village to the other. Remember, there was a clothes seller. He took some of those Volta River Authority, the badges, sorry, the, how do you call it, Yape Queen and all those. They were not just for tourism. They were there for the traders. They were there sometimes to help vehicles move from one, you know, it's happening in Asisawa, another in my region, which borders the farm plains, right? Pontoons and all of those things. So making it safer, making it, so you see we are moving from, you know, from international to domestic use of the lake. Okay. Budget. School children, right? Can we get catamarans, you know, which is used in the Caribbean, which is nothing more than private sector. Trotro on the water lake, in safe catamarans, or improved, you know, canoes as we know it, you know, with better balance to take school kids. You know, there was a time when there was an appeal from a village, you know, and so we bought some, you know, that's our part of the, you know, safety gear for the school children. They were about 8 or 10, you know, and they use, you know, the lake to go from one end to go to school. You see, so they see the interconnection. So the 24-hour economy, which is looking at the effective use of the lake, right? Boss has pipelines. Boss is going to come barge fuel. You don't have to spoil the roads and all that. You are bringing a means of energy. So you see, somebody needs to be coordinating.
Okay.
Right? And with a powerful license who says that, you know, the budget should stop work 5 p.m. because it's dark. They can work around the clock, 24 hours.
I see.
Yeah.
So, and let me understand this carefully. Now, you're saying that Guzi Tana and his team will be doing a coordinating role, but the implementing agencies will ultimately have to be the ministers.
Guzi himself said it already.
Okay.
And the ministers, as I said, were there telling how they are going to be involved in it.
Okay.
We have to make that efficient to avoid friction.
There are those who have heard the 40 billion, because that's the projection of how much it will cost to implement it. Then I've thought, oh, where would we find 40
It's not 1
billion?
year. It's not 1 year.
It's not a year's expenditure.
No, this is a medium. You are going to do heavy construction. So the construction itself, you know, by the time you finish the pipeline, maybe a whole year would have gone.
Okay.
We have the experience. I think we do know as Ghanaians, we have the experience of building the pipelines from the FPSO, you know, to shore.
Okay.
So that can be fed. First, it was the West Africa gas pipeline. We started putting our gas in it, and then we started putting the plants. So what makes it different? This area are only going to build along the lake, not the sea. Right? And that took time to do. So when we're talking about 40 billion, it's not 40 billion, you know, in 6 months.
That'll be spent in 1 year.
No, in 6 months, no.
I see. How do you intend to raise this money?
How did we raise the money for port expansion? How did we raise the money for T3? How did we raise the money, you know, for e-schools? How did we raise the money for hospitals? I said this, we've done some of these things before. Were we not the one who created we're just talking about bonds. That's the purpose of creating the domestic bond. So that when you retire and I have, you know, 10 to 20 years more to live, everybody will, you know, I can say, and that's when we bring back the bond market for heaven's sake. That is what we have to do. That's why we said that we're seeking fund. You know, so that you know that somebody has put money in there. He has retired. And the purpose of putting the money, you know, his retirement money, is that he trusts government.
Okay.
Right? Government will manage. And government will use his money to finance, to the extent that he sees, or to buy dollars, to do what we are talking about now.
Okay.
Which will be profitable, productive. And on average, he wants 20% of my interest, not the money I put in, because I want to add interest so that the money inflation will not eat it and the rest. To go to hospital, to buy food, to do those sort of things. That's what he needs. So why, for heaven's sake, can't you make that 20%, 25%, that you know the person will come in? Why did you stop the sinking fund? Which is a debt repayment account. That's what it means. Now we are talking about how to get 40 billion. My answer to them, you spoil the market that would have given the city component of that. How much is the, you know, I would have brought the statistics, I forgot. How much is the value of the bonds that have been paid? And these are Ghanaians who are putting their money, and the government was borrowing. And remember, we started, when Dr. Dufo started the bonds, you know, it was only T-bills, and then Bank of Ghana notes. 3 months, 1 year, 2 years, you know, Bank of Ghana is saying, because they are using it for liquidity management. Those are for liquidity management. Treasury bills for liquidity management. You know, why liquidity management? That's because at the beginning of the year in particular, before GRA will bring in the money, you need to borrow. But that you should be able to borrow and pay in 3 months. So to those critics, we built the market, which they destroyed. Because remember, we extended the bonds, Dr. Dufo extended from 3 years to 5 years. And then before we left, we experimented and did a 7-year bond, when we moved the bonds from Bank of Ghana to the stock exchange. And the moving to the stock exchange means that the government can sit back, because the government doesn't have to take 20%. Because you see, previously, if you needed your money, right, Bank of Ghana will tell you that on average, you need to provide let's say 4 billion Ghana cedis, because that's the average amount of your bonds which people would like to come and take back. But when you create the bond market, it means that you have your money there, right? Somebody wants to invest. So the stock exchange, which is the market, is trading your bonds. Will tell you that your bond is available and is due, right? And the government will say, okay, sell the bond to the new person. I don't have to provide the money again. The money is now being provided by another Ghanaian who needs the bonds. That is what the bond market was. So from 40%, which government has to provide, government may end up providing just 10-12%. Okay. The rest is being traded among Ghanaians. And the rest is being traded among foreigners. Foreigners who are coming to invest. And when we talk about diaspora bond, it's not fiction. We did $200 million US denominated bond on the Ghana Stock Exchange within 2 years of setting it up. 200 million. It was oversubscribed. Dollar bonds. So it means that the market, I'm saying to the critics, right, that the market that was destroyed is the one that would have provided. And the solution is bringing back that bond market.
So reviving the bond market.
Yes, but discipline yourself in repaying anytime somebody needs, part of their money. Okay. If you do a 10-year bond, it doesn't mean that, that was a problem we had, and we went to HIPIC. We did a 10-year bond, and we were paying on the interest. And then by 2014, we realized that, wait a minute, this bond that, His Excellency Kufuor issued was issued in 2007, and it will fall due in 2017. You see the history of the sinking fund. So we had to prepare for it. We don't wait till 2017. Like we waited and defaulted. So we started using the money. It's 750. So when we did a 2015 bond, we used 200 million to refinance, to give us time, to be able to pay. That's what the refinancing, because there are others who needed our bond. Okay, so just like the Ghanaian example I'm giving, on the international market, there was demand for Ghana's bonds. So we said, okay, look, use 200 million because we can't provide 200 million in 2017, right? Resell, those who want to buy and sell. So we took World Bank money, right? Use it to buy our own bonds and then stretch it to allow us time to pay that World Bank bond. It's part of the default. How do you go back to the World Bank to get support? So, excuse me, I don't want to be using hard language, but those who destroyed and are today critics should look at what they did to Ghana.
Those who destroyed?
Yes, and are today critics and say we cannot raise the money. We cannot raise the money because of what they destroyed. Because of what we destroyed. And let me conclude. So we set up a sinking fund and use 335, approximately, just average it to be 350, right? To buy back our bonds before 2017. So add 200, which we refinance, to 350 to make the math simple. That's 550. It was left, the bond is 750. It was left to 200. And we saved money in the sinking fund, 250 million. And the NPP government used that money October 4th, 2017 to pay for the 200 million. That's the only reason we didn't default on the first sovereign bond.
And that's the preparation you're talking about?
That's the preparation I'm talking about. So if you destroy the thing, don't tell the person who prepared, that you cannot raise money. You destroy it. You are making it difficult for us, to get the money with your default. And it was in the news.
And that's where the difficulty is, because
it's in the news. How much did the Honorable Forcing overnight? How much did we pay? Was it not, was it $500 million or something?
Yeah.
In order that we can save that. Do you know what 500 million can do if we had kept the structure, right? If we had kept the structure, that is money that would have been saved, for us to have used in 24-hour economy. Today we are using it, to pay for default before the IMF goes to the board. So the critics should please, admit to their role.
Be that as it may, you're in government.
Yes.
And like you said, when you came in, the very first things you have to do was to even pay debts.
Yes.
They have left the debt for you. Everything.
And I said last night,
Yes.
we paid another one, big sum of money.
Oh, you paid debt just last night?
Yes. You Google. Is there? It was in your news, so maybe you were busy, so you didn't.
I see.
Yes.
And that...
We paid part of the debt that was suspended.
Okay.
Just 3 years ago when we defaulted. As of last night, the Minister of Finance, it was in a statement they issued. Had to pay, and so the critics should know that is the reason you are saying we cannot know. If you had followed and kept the sinking fund, you wouldn't have defaulted. If you want to be in the market, you wouldn't have defaulted. If you want to be in the market, you must discipline yourself. But you came and you stop it. That's by using 200 million. That's by using 200 million, right, of money we left, 250, to pay the last balance of the bond which your administration issued first. It was a good initiative, taking advantage of the HIPIC to get into because we had become a middle-income country. So we won't have to go there and borrow.
I see.
Yes.
I see. But the interesting thing is that because government is a continuum, you don't only inherit projects, you inherit reputations too.
Yes.
So the reputation of government currently is that we gave you money, you defaulted, you did not pay.
Can I go back to history 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when we defaulted? Did you remember? I think I was in history. Do you remember?
Yes.
Them saying that the debt which we are talking about includes debt which what? Rawlings, incurred, before incurred, His Excellencies, incurred, His Excellency Mills incurred, His Excellency Mama incurred, and they were giving us a breakdown. Why did they stop the sinking fund initiative after they got 3 oil fields? We set it up with 1 oil field. They got 3 oil fields, Esla and all those, And the money they used to take off there was money we left. So why stop it if the thing was good?
I understand that point, but I'm saying you have inherited your reputation. So how do you manage that reputation and still be able to revive a market where your reputation is bad? Because
do what was done last night. You said governments assist each other. Yes, one government mess up, but if you don't resolve it, if you don't pay that debt, yes, do we have priorities? We could have paid arrears, we could have paid of which they left, every government leaves. We could have applied for them. You know what it means, for our road infrastructure? Couldn't it do even 2 lanes so that we avoid, the mayhem that is on the Chimota road to Nsamam? You could have done it easily. But because you defaulted, we were not paying the debt. Now we have used that money to go and pay that debt in order that we can do as Ghana. Otherwise, we'll end up like countries, which have become basket cases and nobody wants to give them, loan for development.
So the key thing is pay your debt when they are due.
That's the only reason. Yes. And if we didn't pay and we said that this was incurred by the last administration, they did the default or whatever, then we will not go to the board because it's a condition. And that's why they help us to do the debt, the suspension and all those, yes. And that is why the Honorable Atufosin had to fly to China to talk about their debt, which was defaulted.
I guess you can understand.
Last week it was in China.
Yeah, I guess I can understand our surprise when we see the CD dollar exchange rate doing better. We see inflation doing better because we didn't expect those results very early in the administration, knowing the difficulties you had inherited.
Exactly, and they know the difficulties. So if my friends and brothers and others, and because they are friends, if they are listening, this is the explanation. That part of the problem was created. So shouldn't be pontificating and making it say that we cannot raise the money for the 24 hours. We cannot raise the money for the 24 hours if we sat down and didn't repair the damage. Okay. But we are repairing the damage. And the ratings have gone up. We are now B- from junk, B-, right? So we have to continue. And maybe watch it. With these payments, you shouldn't be surprised if we are back to B+.
With the payments? B+?
Yeah, that is why we're downgraded. That is why we're downgraded. So if we are committed, as agreed with the IMF, the World Bank, and the debt suspension which was suspended, and we are paying, are you surprised that the ratings is being good? And are you surprised that we are good? Even the fund agrees that it's time to open the domestic market again so that Ghanaians can buy their bond. And then hopefully we give ourselves time. We don't have to rush it. Give ourselves time to see whether we can open, the external bond market. And that is how you get the Forex to come and do the projects. And then let's be disciplined in setting up the debt repayment account. So that we can continue borrowing. Every country borrows. Mighty US, when Biden wanted to do his big infrastructure, what you call the big push, right, which they are doing now, they borrowed. And that's what spiked the debt, the US debt. But then they repay. And at the point in time, the US was downgraded because it was looking shaky.
Well, if you just join us, we are having a conversation on what said Terkpeh. Of course, there are some interesting things that have been said, and I'm sure you've had cause to respond to some of them. Still, they insist. And I think I heard one professor say the same thing, that despite the explanation you're giving, they keep insisting that there's no policy intervention you can point to that can say is responsible for what we are seeing in terms of the successes of the economy.
There is. The two words is debt default. The two words is debt default. And let's be modest. Let's just say that we let a very stellar economy and why did we default? If everything was stellar. I'm saying that if you cannot pinpoint to anything, two words, debt default, another one word, haircut. Ghanaians suffered it. When we did it, it was foreigners who bore the brunt, because their loan is what they forgave. Now the chickens came home to roost. So where have they put haircut? Remember the first suspended debt that we paid after the haircut was the one to the pensioners. You remember? Yes. And then now we've just paid another one. Are we not cleaning after them?
Well, you do have a...
So if they want the evidence, these are the evidence. Forget about the IPP, ESLA, money was there, collateralized, and yet today we are talking about IPP debt. And senators are threatening that we should pay American companies before we go to the IMF board. Why was ESLA not used to pay? I mean, for envy's sake, I think we should. That's why, some of them come and explain these issues for our base. They should be frustrated with what they say. Yeah.
I want to take a break, but before that, I realize that there's one other thing that His Excellency has been talking about. It's the state of the state agencies.
Yes.
Are you making any progress in trying to turn them around? Because some of the debts on their books are huge.
Yeah, but remember we started, right? And there were some results. When we talk about Terkpeh port expansion, who was in charge? The money we had to talk to their board. Honorable Fuson Pafu was then a board chairman, right? We had to talk to them. Find alternative ways. We cannot as a party develop, right? If we don't make use of the dollars that are coming to you. And what we kept saying is that if we expand the port, if we tighten our belt, we don't need the IMF to come and tell us to time, but if we tighten our belt and we use those dollars to backstop the loan, remember, Asma Banda, you remember what HE was saying when he threw the challenge? It's because he knew that we can ring-fence the dollars. But then we knew we will be able to ring-fence the dollars. That was coming from shipping dues and the rest. Right? That's what we ring-fence. Don't we have the port expansion? Is it not continuing? And when Guzi says that we are bringing leveraging private sector, we did the port. The container depots and things, the expansion that you see there when you go to Terkpeh port, they are all private. Both foreign and local. They are private. So who says that there's no example of, is it government that owns the duty-free shops in Terminal 3? Were many of them not, issued because we finished the, but the allocation. Was the allocation not done by the NPP? Is it not private? It's not government money. All we did was build the airport, do the infrastructure, the runway and whatever. But if you go there, who did the allocation? Please, you can let your
No.
Yes. And is there no private investment?
Yes.
Of course, we did the immigration and those are public. So please let your producers, go to airport company and get the statistics of those who are there. See whether one of those duty-free shops and the rest belong to
the state.
Yes. Yeah. And when we did expansion, who had to do, the carrying of passengers and the rest? Is it not a private company?
Yes.
Right. Otherwise, if the state would have had to put the Yalolo buses there to do that. And can't you see the, Swissport, the big structure they put there? We are managing the port and whatever. Is it a private sector? So, I mean, we have done, let me tell you, our MPs and our new MPs, and that we have the record. We have the record. And we should stand up to those who are saying it cannot be done. We should have confidence in ourselves as Ghanaians.
Well, all right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, I will actually like to turn to the book, because I'm sure this will not be the last time I'll be hosting in studio over the course of this administration. If I am here,
I promise you, as I used to.
Yes, as we used to do. We'll do it as regularly as we can.
When you were even online.
Yes. Honorable was one of those people who, even when we were online, would always come in, would have a conversation, would come in very early, stay with us for 1.5 hours, a whole conversation on the economy. So it's nice to have you in studio this morning. We're having a conversation with Honorable Seth Terkpeh. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll turn to a book he's written, actually, because of all the things that he could have written about, he chose VAT. He could have written about his experience at the IMF as finance minister. Anyway, but still VAT. So we'll find out why the VAT experience is so important.
PENDREAM TV. Now, so far so good. Say open online portal e Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.